the fact that you were in a house on that record, we wanted to get, I want to go ahead and jump forward to this where we can touch on this. And so much has changed with technology.
Right.
We were into the Pro Tools thing a while ago, and Dave and I got together a couple hours the other day, and I wasn't aware he was the king of the big mix desk and had a great Mark Dobson, you know, that you were able to work with as your Pro Tools engineer.
Mm-hmm.
That's his wife Rachel right there. You know, he at the height of all that, we're talking. You've got Dave, his SSL, the world's greatest Pro Tools operator, a very capable assistant, and now here we are in 2008, and talk about some of the stuff you're doing. You're mixing in the box quite successfully.
Things had to change. As we all know, the business has changed. And in 2006, I was finding, I was getting contacted by a lot of bands that I loved the material and they wanted me to mix it, but they would tell me, you know, the horror stories of, we've got $5,000 to mix this entire record. Can you do it? And I didn't have my own setup yet. And, you know, I would have to go, I had to say no. Because if I had to go to one of the studios in town, it would be like, you know, can I give you $500 for your room? Most of the guys would say absolutely not. Any decent room in town would say absolutely not. But if they did say yes, it would mean that I'd mix basically the whole album to pay the studio bill. So I just turned down 5 or 6 bands in 2006 that I would have liked to have done and just couldn't do, not because only because they didn't have the money and I didn't have a means to offer an alternate way of doing it. So in 2007, from working with Matt Zerletic, I went out and bought massive amounts of Pro Tools stuff, you know, $70,000, $80,000 of Pro Tools stuff, because we had been renting for a long time, and it got to a point where I just kind of felt responsible to not have to rent, you know, so I went out and just bought it. Plus the guy was paying me a shitload of money. I needed to write off. So I bought tons of Pro Tools stuff, and in 2007 I thought, you know, I gotta figure out how to work with the way the direction the business is going, is that more and more record companies are wanting to do things for less and less and less. And the more successful records come out that are done for $50,000 and $60,000, that gives birth to the record company's opinion of saying, well, why should we spend $100,000 now? Shit, we made that Taylor Swift record, right, for $50,000. So, and it was a huge hit. So why should we spend $100,000? Let's do another one for 50 or 40. Yeah. You know, so that's been unfortunate. We've all experienced that. You know, record companies and independent record companies. Everybody wants the quality of the records that we made 10 years ago, but they don't want to pay the prices that they paid 10 years ago. And so, and then there's a lot of bands that don't even have contracts or labels, and they're paying for it out of their doing live shows. And so, and there's a lot of amazing bands out there. So it comes to a decision of saying, okay, am I only going to do the big bands that have the money, or am I going to try and put myself out there for bands that very possibly could be big bands in another year or two? Because, you know, if the right person is behind the board making the record, you know, they have the talent. They just need to be able to make the record cheap so that they can stand a chance to become possibly a big band. So in 2007, I put my own place together to accommodate those bands.
But you said something the other day that I thought was great, because there's this whole stigma within the box mixing, and you told me, I feel like I'm actually doing some of the best work I've ever done. Yeah. Which I thought that was great.
Yeah, and the thing that has 2 years ago, I would have never, if you had asked me, you know, do you think you'll ever do anything in the box or not use an SSL, I would have said, absolutely not. You'd be out of your mind. I will never not work in the studio. But I have found having my own place and doing stuff in the box, it has allowed me to see when we're all in the studio, we have to pay a day rate, whether it's, you know, 500, 1,000, 1,500, whatever it is. You're going to get charged for the 12 hours that's what the lockout rate is, right? So obviously we're all forced to have to do the best work in that time. We've got to listen to a song that we've never heard before, sort it all out, take it all in, try and figure out a direction to go with it, and then go through EQ, compress, balance, effect, drums, and then bass, and then guitars, and vocals, and keys, and yada, and yada, and on and on. And, you know, sometimes if it is a 70, 80, 90 fader mix, it's maybe 4 or 5 o'clock before you've gone through and EQ'd and compressed and affected, and then now it's 4 or 5 o'clock. The producer's going to probably come in at 6 and say, play me my hit record. And so now you've got an hour to sit back and be objective and go, okay, now is this sound better on the left, or maybe it should be on the right, or maybe there's too much delay on that, or maybe there's not enough delay, or maybe it shouldn't have delay at all, maybe it should be dry. And so, but you've got to try and squeeze that all into that lockout day. And inevitably, what I look back at is, I look back, you know, yeah, a lot of things I've done have been successful, but sometimes I've listened back days or weeks or months later and wished I had spent a little more time on it. Maybe I would have done something a little bit different if I had only had the chance, but I was running against the clock. And beating the clock is a very tough thing. You know, and then the producer comes in and he wants to hear it finished. You know, so I'm constantly like timing myself. You know, okay, it's 2 o'clock, I got to move on, get these background vocals done, or it's 3 o'clock, I better start doing my final balances because I've got to dump it onto a CD, take it into the car and listen to it and write down what my changes are, and then come back in and make, because I think changing environments when you're at that stage of a mix, changing either if you're in the control room and you change speakers, that's very, very helpful if you've been mixing on the same set of speakers for hours and hours and hours. Change speakers. You've been on Yamahas, go to your KRKs, or you've been on KRKs, go to your Yamahas, or you know, whatever your speaker situation is. And even, I think there's a lot of validity if we spend so much time in our cars listening to the radio and listening to other people's records, to take your own record totally out of the studio, take it into your car and listen to it and see if it holds up the way the other records that you like hold up. You know, the records that I love sound this certain way in my car when my system is flat. Is my mix sound is exciting? And if it doesn't, what can I change about it? I think that, you know, is great validity to that. But the thing with the Pro Tools is now I don't have to mix a song in a day. I'll spend 4 hours, 5 hours, and mix 90% of it in those 4 or 5 hours, and then I just shut it off. And the next day I'll go back to it and listen to it. And you know, by the time I'm done with it the first day, it's balanced, it's EQ'd, and maybe I've started thinking about effects. So that the next day I come in and listen to it, all the bullshit work is done. Now I'm going to listen to it like a song. Now I'm going to listen to it the way that you guys would listen to it if it was on the radio, and kind of sit and go, all right, should this vocal be wetter or drier or this or that? Or maybe I've got too much bottom on it, or maybe it's too bright, or maybe it's not bright enough. I'm coming into it with fresh ears, and I find that that's a tremendous freedom for me to be able to do that. And I don't have to worry about turning to my client and saying, well, I've just spent 2 days of studio time on that song so that it turned out the best it could be. I don't have that worry anymore. It's like, I'm not going to charge for my studio anyway, so what does it matter if I take a day or 2 days or 3 days? So it has allowed me tremendous freedom, and that is the reason I think that what I'm doing now for me is probably better than I've ever done because of that freedom. So it's been strange that the thing that I resisted the most has turned out to now make me the happiest.
Work in your favor. That's
yeah.
great.
So